بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome one and all to this presentation by Advocate Mohammed Vahed. This seminar has been arranged by the Association of Muslims of South Africa. We will start first with Kalam Allah is the best Kalam, best speech. So I'll start with a few verses of the Quran, inshallah. Then we'll have Brother Zafar to introduce our honored guest, and then we'll pass it on to our guest, inshallah. Just checking that if people can listen in, inshallah. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من جاء بالحسنة فله عشر أمثالها ومن جاء بالسيئة فلا يجزى إلا مثلها وهم لا يظلمون. قل إنني هداني ربي إلى صراط مستقيم دينا قيما ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين. قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين. صدق الله العظيم. Alhamdulillah, I recited a few verses from towards the end of Surah Al-An'am. I chose these verses. Allah says, Man jaa bil hasanati falahu ashru amsalha. Whoever does some good, Allah rewards him tenfold. Then Allah told Prophet ﷺ, and I think this is what we all hope for. Allah accept it from us, and we are aiming at the amps also. We also say, Kul innani hadani rabbi ila siratin mustaqim. We thank Allah for guiding part of Islam and making Ummah Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Then we say, Kul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. We are then saying that our salati, all our ibadah, salah, everything for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our sacrifices, whatever you try to do, our living, our dying is for Rabbil Alameen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all our efforts. And at the end of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends a very beautiful way. He says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَكُمْ خَلَائِفَ الْأَرْضِ. He has made us Khalifa, vicegerents on earth. But then Allah goes in the same ayah to say, وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَكُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah has raised some of us higher than the other in ranks. So which means Allah is telling us that He's given different people different expertise, different skills. لِيُبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ, to show how you have used the ni'mah, the benefit that Allah has given us. So alhamdulillah, today we have our brother Mohammed over here, who inshallah will share with us some of the wisdom, the knowledge, and the skills that Allah has given us. Jazakallah to one and all for attending this the session this morning. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial to one and all, and also to the ummah. And now pass it on to Brother Zafar to take over. Jazakallah, Brother Zafar.
Jazakallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Karishab, thank you very much for that beautiful recitation and the brief explanation of those beautiful verses of the Quran. Again, also on behalf of the Association of Muslim Schools South Africa, we'd like to welcome all our delegates to the session. Normally the association would organize a conference for educators, or we do some sort of workshops or on-site things, but of course, COVID, with all of its challenges, also presents us with beautiful opportunities like this, where we can invite our teachers from all of our schools across the country to participate in an online webinar of this nature. So I'd like to welcome all of our teachers from all of the schools, all of the M schools across South Africa. We'd like to welcome you to this, and we trust, inshallah, that this workshop will be beneficial. My task is really simple, is to sort of invite Advocate Mohammed Vahed onto the podium. Advocate who's well known to us in the Natal area and to many schools, Muslim schools in Gauteng, where he's also done some work. He's the founder of Young Leaders Academy, an organization that is committed and dedicated to developing leadership in the up-and-coming youth of our country. He's also an academic and author, published a couple of books, a personal trainer, and like I said, his focus is mainly on developing youth leadership, and he's widely read in many other areas, and he has something to offer to teachers as well. And this particular presentation is trying to get teachers to understand their very important role in educating the future generation. So with those few words, it's my pleasure to hand over to Mohammed Vahed. We're looking forward, sir, to a wonderful workshop this morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to all the delegates. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning to everyone. As you can see, today's presentation is a very, very important topic, and that is education and careers in the 21st century, and how can we compete with AI and robots. Now, anyone seeking employment today in South Africa faces 5 specific challenges. And the first one of them in South Africa is the very high rate of unemployment. And statistics show that South Africa has got the highest rate of unemployment internationally. And if you look at this picture that I'm showing now, you notice that our unemployment rate is even worse than some of the countries in Africa, such as Sudan, and even worse than the West Bank and Gaza. So those shows just how difficult it will be for job seekers to find work. And if we look at the applications that are being made for existing jobs, especially in the government sector, public sector, you'll notice that, as you can see in this article here, there were just 250 nursing posts that were advertised recently, and there were 5,000 nurses who arrived with their documentation at that school and at that hospital, and it was chaotic. And in 2018, 10,000 enrolled nurses arrived for 300 nursing posts. Then recently, SARS also was swamped with job applications. They had put out an advert for 570 positions, and from there, in respect of that, they had 88,009 applications. Can you believe that? So the state of unemployment in our country, this amply demonstrates the challenges that we face as a country. So that is the first challenge. The second challenge is South Africa's poor standard of education, especially in the public schools. Now, recently, a survey was carried out regarding the countries with the best and worst standard of education. And the top 4 globally were Finland, Japan, South Korea, and Denmark. And as far as where South Africa featured, South Africa was ranked second last in the world, 75 out of a total of 76 countries. So that's a second very, very big disadvantage our recent graduates, young graduates, our students face. And the reason why the education system is so poor in South Africa, Amnesty International in one of the reports recently stated it was because of South Africa's crumbling infrastructure, overcrowded classrooms, and inequality, with the poor hardest hit according to that report. So this is a second challenge that all of us face if you are looking for employment today. The third challenge, as all of us know, is the effect of COVID-19. We thought that it will just last for a year, but we don't know when it's going to leave us. And it was reported that South African economy could take up to 4 years to recover from COVID-19. And this might even take longer. So that's the third big challenge. The fourth big challenge was the effect of riots and the looting that we experienced recently. And these were just some of the costs that the country has to bear arising out of these riots. Just in KZN, it impacted our GDP by 20 billion rand, and it's growing because this was statistics as at the 19th of July 2021. Now, add to all of these things, we are now faced with competing with AI and robots. Previously, blue-collar jobs were being taken over by robots. The more mundane jobs, the more repetitive work. However, especially overseas, AI and robots are now taking over even white-collar jobs. So this makes it extremely, extremely difficult for us, even as educators, if you want to look for greener pastures, or even our students, both in school and university. So this is what we're trying to address. Unfortunately, this is going to be the situation once our learners leave the school, they go to university, they'll get their degrees, and they will be very, very overjoyed by it, and rightfully so. But unfortunately, the reality is 3 out of 4 of them will probably join the unemployment queues. And it is stated that although our unemployment rate is in the region of 33, 34%, if you look at the unemployment rate of millennials, that is now looking from age 18 to age about 37, it shoots up to almost 73%. It shows that 3 out of 4 of our youth are unemployed, and even those who are going to seek employment shortly will come up against all these challenges. So how do we address these challenges? And that is what this presentation is all about. Now, before commencing with the topic itself, I thought I'll just give you some basic definition of some of the terms that we're going to be using throughout this presentation. So firstly, artificial intelligence. We've heard a lot about it, AI, but what exactly is it? So artificial intelligence is intelligence demonstrated by machines, unlike the natural intelligence displayed by humans and animals, which involves consciousness and emotionality. So this is what artificial intelligence is. Then we hear a lot about machine learning. So what is machine learning? Machine learning is an application of AI that provides systems the ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. And this is intruding more and more in our lives today. It is used in internet search engines, email filters to sort out spam, and websites to make personalized recommendations, etc. Now, if I were to ask you, who knows you the best? Whether it's home, whether it's in your working environment, anywhere, who knows you the best? If you ponder on that for a few seconds, I'm sure what's going through your mind is maybe my spouse, my husband, my wife, etc. But they actually don't know you as well as AI. Who knows you the best, actually, if you think of it, is YouTube. Because you know that when we go on to YouTube and we're looking for something, we're searching for something, and then we, after viewing that particular video, and the next time we log on, there'll be 5 or 6 similar videos that will pop up. And each time you look at the video, it's something better than the last. So this is what AI is doing. Behind the scene, it is analyzing who we are, what our preferences are. So this is what machine learning is all about. Then thirdly, algorithm. All of us have heard about algorithm, but what exactly is algorithm? So very simply, algorithm is a set of step-by-step procedures or a set of rules to follow for completing a specific task or solving a particular problem. And let me give you some typical examples. The recipe for baking a cake, that's actually an algorithm. The method we use to solve a long division problem. The process of doing the laundry and the steps followed when we want to withdraw money at the bank are all examples of algorithms. So it's quite simple really if we understand it. So these are the three things now that are going to impact our lives more and more. And here's a nice video I'd like to play to show that robots are overtaking humans in many activities. And in this particular video, it shows that the robot was versing a samurai expert. This person was a 5 times world samurai expert, and he wanted to see whether the robot would do better than the samurai expert. So in this video, you'll see in a moment, the robot did not know anything about all the strokes that they were going to be competing. There were 4 different cuts or strokes. And just by looking at the samurai, the robot was able to mimic each of the different actions. And then when they competed in the 4 strokes, you notice 1 or 2 of the strokes, the samurai did better, 1 or 2, the robot did better. And the last one, who could chop down those bamboos, 1,000 of them in the shortest possible time, and you could see who won. So let me share this video with you. Okay, so you notice from that the samurai master, he was totally exhausted at the end, and yet the robot could have gone on for hours. So let's look at some of the industries, some of the occupations that are also being taken over now by robots and AI. So if you look in the law and insurance industries, more people signed up for Harvard's online courses in 1 year than attended the university in its entire existence. Then when it comes to insurance, in 2017, IBM's Watson replaced 34 claims assessment staff of a Japanese insurance company. Then if you look at legal and commercial fields, in America, there is an online legal platform. It's called LegalZoom, and it's a legal drafting and advice platform, and it is the best known legal brand in the US. We all have heard of JP Morgan, the commercial banker. And in 2014, they introduced the Coin software that did in seconds what would take 360,000 hours of traditional legal time. So even in the legal field, because remember, whatever is happening overseas, after a few years come to South Africa. So this is going to be the reality of future job seekers in these professions. If you look at the taxation and mediation field, in America, and this was way back in 2014, 48 million Americans use the online software TurboTax to prepare their tax returns. So you might be wondering what happens to all these tax consultants. In mediation, eBay has on average about 60 million annual disputes between the buyers and sellers. And these are resolved by online platform, e-mediation, and even other large companies are using this dispute resolution process. So this gives you an idea. I just given you some examples. It gives you an idea of how quickly AI and robots are now taking over our jobs. So where does this leave us? And what we don't sometimes understand is that AI is progressing so fast, and we have to keep pace. So now they've actually moved from artificial intelligence to something that's called ASI, artificial superintelligence. And we are now moving to artificial superintelligence, which is the development of machines with intelligence vastly superior to humans. Up to this stage, what was being done is AI used to be about putting commands in the box. Human programmers, a number of them would get together and painstakingly they would handcraft knowledge and they would feed it into the computers and into the machines. However, this is something that's of the past. What is happening now is the handcrafting of the knowledge is something of the past. What is happening is programmers are creating algorithms that learn often from raw perceptual data. So instead of preparing knowledge and feeding it into the computers and then they spit it out when we ask them the questions, now they're actually educating it, giving it the ability to come up with its own algorithms, and thereafter it's able to analyze raw data. So ASI is an intellect that is much smarter than the best human brains in practically every field, including scientific, creativity, general wisdom, and even social skills. We thought that social skills were something that we would be protected, the soft skills, but AI is even moving in that direction. So whichever government or company succeeds in inventing the first artificial superintelligence will obtain a potentially world-dominating technology. And the countries are now racing to see who is the first. And Elon Musk has even warned that the global race towards AI could result in a third world war. So who are the main players? Main players are obviously America, and very close behind is China and Russia. So China is a leading competitor to the US. In 2017, the Chinese government released a strategy detailing its plan to take the lead in AI by 2030. And just 2 months later, Vladimir Putin publicly announced Russia's intent to pursue AI technologies, stating whoever becomes the leader in this field will rule the world. So you can see the race has commenced many years ago, and we have to make sure that we're keeping up with what's happening. And just to conclude on this particular note, even the armies are being prepared using superintelligence. So these are the armies of the US of the future. Automated vehicles are going to be used, a whole host of drones. So this is the type of wars that are going to be fought in future. Now, just to talk a little about the speed at which data is growing. According to Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, there were 5 exabytes of information created between the dawn of civilization to 2008. But that much information is now created every 2 days. Can you imagine? From the dawn of civilization to 2008, all that megabytes or exabytes is now produced in just 2 days. It is estimated that Google processes approximately 63,000 queries every second. And this translates to 2 trillion global searches per year. And on Netflix, in 2019, nearly 695,000 hours of Netflix contents were watched per minute. And it was just 266,000 in 2018, just 1 year earlier. So this is the amount of data that is being generated. And we just can't keep up with this data. So as far as data is concerned, human beings cannot compete with AI and robots. But if we want to beat AI and robots, then we have to look at something else. This means that as the world increases its use of AI, critical skills become even more critical. And this is what we're going to be discussing in a moment. Data is only reliable as its quality, completeness, and focus. So the quality of data increases when we give the information insight. And human beings are needed to make sense of data and create meaning. So there is a role for all of us. So what is that role? Let's just do a quick exercise. What does this graph tell you? Let's have a look at this graph. There is a vertical axis and there is a horizontal axis. On the vertical axis, it shows that drowning is increasing. On the vertical axis, it shows that ice cream sales are increasing. Now, what does this mean? That's data that is out there. So someone has to make sense of this data. So just think for a moment, what could this really mean? Yes, it is true that ice cream sales increase and drowning increases. But the question is, why is that with more ice cream eating, more people are drowning? Consider that for a few seconds. Is it because they eat too much of ice creams on the beach? Maybe they get bloated and maybe that could cause a drowning. Or maybe they are in a frame of mind more relaxed. So what's the reason? But the reason really is, in summer, ice cream sales increase, and in summer, drowning increase. The probability of drowning increase in the same season when ice cream sales increase. Although the two are unrelated, but the season is the same. That is the reason why the graph is correct. So, will we ever forget this graph? Never. Why? Because you converted the raw information into an insight. And this is where human beings come in. Raw data is there. To generate the raw data, to store the raw data, we cannot compete with AI and machines. However, to make sense of the data, this is where we still got a role. Now, these are some of the most in-demand jobs in 2020, according to LinkedIn. Now, have a look at this list. There's 10 most in-demand jobs, and number 11, they're given some soft skills. And then look at what we as educators, are we preparing our learners for these jobs? So what are some of these jobs? Blockchain, cloud computing, analytical reasoning, AI, user experience design, business analysis, affiliate marketing, sales, scientific computing, and video production. So if we run our eyes down that list of 10 most in-demand jobs, only about 2 or 3 will look familiar. The rest of them will look not something that we are quite accustomed with. And then what LinkedIn says, employers are also looking for people with soft skills. Schools, universities, colleges, they actually train people for the hard skills, but not the soft skills in most cases. So what are some of these soft skills? These are the 5 most in-demand soft skills according to LinkedIn. Creativity, persuasion. So persuasion, it also embraces communication skills. Collaboration, that is working in teams, working with diverse people from diverse backgrounds. Adaptability, how fluid we are in our thinking. Mental elasticity, and emotional intelligence. So these are the 5 most in-demand soft skills. When it comes to hard skills, sometimes the hard skills is what will get people called for an interview. But what will really get them employed is not so much the hard skills, but the soft skills. Or if you're already in employment, what will keep us in employment is really the soft skills. And we are always hearing that hard skills can be taught, but soft skills cannot be taught. So therefore, what's happening now in universities have got workplace readiness programs for most of their final year students. And the purpose is because they themselves realize that there is a huge gap between what the students are learning here at university and what is required in the working world. And one of the main gaps is all the soft skills. So are we really preparing learners for the jobs that await them? Let's consider that for a moment. And I'll give you the latest thinking in this regard. Now, something that has taken the world by storm is 3D printing. But the extent to which it has taken the world by storm, you might not really be aware of it. So let me just draw your attention to this. This here is a box. It's a 3D printer. It's maybe 3 or 4 times the size of a laptop. And that's the size of the current smaller version of the 3D printer. The huge 3D printers are those that you can see the picture on the right-hand side. The small 3D printer that at the moment costs in America for around $200, right? So just about 5,000 to 6,000 rand at most. And the most expensive ones cost $2.5 million. And those are used for constructing big buildings, etc. And how big is this industry? This industry is currently $7 billion, and it is growing by the day. So let's see what are some of the things that can be done, are being done at the moment with 3D printing. In fact, it is said that soon every house will have a 3D printer, every business will have a 3D printer, just as we have got our laptops. So if our kids want toys, why go to the shop and buy? We can just design it ourselves and we can print it on our own. Here is an example of a motorcycle manufactured from scratch, built from scratch on a 3D printer. Here's expensive pieces. This is clothing, fancy clothing. This was designed by 3D printers. Aeroplane parts are now being designed by 3D printers. Previously, the position was if a plane got stuck somewhere in an outlying area, they had to wait for days for parts to be sent there. Now, many of the airports have got their own 3D printers. So if something goes wrong, something has to be replaced, immediately they manufacture it, they print it themselves. Even luxury sports car manufacturers are using 3D printers for manufacturing parts of the vehicle. So tomorrow, if there is an accident with your vehicle and you've got this right-sized 3D printer, a fender or a bumper or something is damaged, you could even print it yourself. In an industry where 3D printing is becoming more in use is the medical industry. So you can see there in the photograph, ears, nose, even bones are being printed with 3D printers. And recently they tried to print a heart. And here's a photograph of the heart that they tried to print. Okay, it wasn't very successful, but that was the first attempt at printing a heart with a 3D printer. Even guns can be manufactured now with 3D printers. In fact, in America, they're busy with legislation to ban printing of firearms. And surprise, surprise, even the fashion industry hasn't been left behind. And on the catwalks in Milan and in Paris, you are now seeing models modeling clothing that has been manufactured with 3D printers. So this is where the world is moving, friends. And some very unusual places also 3D printers are being used. So for instance, we know about the corals are being depleted throughout the world for various reasons. So in Maldives, for example, they are printing coral reefs. Entire coral reefs are being printed with 3D printers. And now they're even moving now from 3D printer into a 4D printer. Now, what's a 4D printer? 4D printer is they print something, but in the center of that, it requires maybe air or it requires liquid or gases. So that is what is being printed by the 4D printers. So they print that object, they remove whatever is on the inside, they transport it to its destination, and then they insert whatever the filling is. So that is where we're moving now to 4D printers. Now, what is very, very interesting is NASA for many years had a huge problem. And the problem was when they go to outer space and they want to take photographs of maybe the moon or Mars or wherever, they have a problem because of the sunlight. So when the sun is shining, as when we want to take our photographs and the sun is shining, then the photograph is not very clear. So that's also the problem that they were facing there at NASA. So what did they do? They decided to make shields like this. And the shield would be made in such a way that it could be folded up. So then when they go out into outer space and they are taking out the photograph, firstly it will be folded, and then they'll open it, and it will form the filter. And through the filter, they will be able to take out the photograph. So this is what the end product is looking like. But guess who they are looking for? Adverts went out, they were looking for someone to do this for them. Now, all of us would have seen this at some time or the other. We would have played with it in our youth. We might even be playing with it or showing our kids. So that is made from origami. So NASA were looking for people who knew origami to join them in America. Why? Because they wanted the people who know origami to develop these filters. Are we preparing our students for occupations like this? Then, what people are doing as well is they're looking at what's in the industry, or rather what's in the environment, what's in nature. Like here, there's a shell. They looked at the shell and then they got designs from that shell. So this is what engineers, architects are doing as well. They're looking at nature and getting impressions from there or ideas from there. So the big question to all of us is, are we preparing learners for the jobs that await them? And it is said that 60 to 65% of our learners, when they go into the working world, the jobs that they're going to be doing have not even been thought of now. It makes us think, really. So let's let learners stop rote learning. This is something that I think we need to appreciate, that this is a reality. We are actually teaching the learners to study for the tests and exams, get through the tests and exams, and then go into your next standard. This is what education has now become. And then we know what happens, even when we have written exams, even postgraduate exams that we write, and the day after we've written the exam, we've forgotten 50% of it. And within a week or two, we've forgotten about 90% of it. That's because of the way in which the learners are being taught. So the biggest drawback of rote learning is that you cannot pass competitive exams that ask more opinionated and reason-based questions. It is easy to pass the normal exams. So what would an opinionated or reason-based question look like? So if students were asked to give some facts about Nelson Mandela, they'd rattle away. Easy, because they've rote learned it. But if they were asked, what would have happened if Mr. Mandela were alive today? Will they be able to answer that question? Now, these are type of questions that robots cannot answer yet. Why? Because it requires an opinion. It requires reasoning. So this is where we can still compete with AI and robots. So the rote learning students will be incapable of writing a single line about Mr. Mandela, because they never understood the fundamentals of his leadership. And what are competitive exams? So competitive exams will be like the chartered accountant exam, the advocates, attorneys exam, the board exams that they write. And because standards have to be maintained by those examination bodies, therefore now we notice the type of results they are getting. And these are recent statistics. A shockingly low 43% of the country's aspiring chartered accountants who wrote the 2020 exams passed the SECA examination. 43%, can you imagine? And then this is what that report stated. In an even more concerning outcome, just 24% of the 1,792 Black African candidates passed the exams that they wrote in December. Only 24%. But that doesn't give us much comfort, because if you look at the pass rate of the other races, it was also nothing to write home about. Of the 1,315 white candidates, they achieved a 64% pass rate. Of the 535 Indian candidates, there was a 53% pass rate. And of 238 colored potential chartered accountants, only 45% passed. And this has been the trend that has been coming down from year to year. So statistics show, and this was in the Star newspaper in 2021 April, in 2016, 89% of candidates passed. Then there was a drop to 80% in 2017. Further drop to 68%. What a drop, from 80 to 68% in 2018, and 2019 to 57%, and now it's gone right down to 46%. So friends, this is the reality. If we continue teaching them the way we are teaching at the moment, this is going to be the trend. And when I asked a friend of mine who is in this field, what's the reason for it? He stated, well, some of the reasons given by the examination bodies, they say that COVID-19 had a part to play. We don't deny that COVID-19 did have a part to play. However, what this friend of mine who trains prospective chartered accountants, he gives them tuition, preparing them for the board exam. What did he say? He said the reason for poor results is that many of today's students cannot solve problems. They are good at rote learning, but very poor at applying their knowledge. Now, this is very, very frightening, friends, because whilst internet and all these facilities that we have now, online teaching, etc., has made life so much easier for us, but there's a problem to it as well. The advantage is from the comfort of our home, we can do our lecturing, our teaching, even the work that we do, the type of work that I do, the training that I do. Now, from the comfort of my lounge, I'm able to do the work. So that's a plus. But what's the downside of it? The downside of it is that now every one of you and the future graduates, they are going to be competing with people from throughout the world. So even today, even in our own field in education, you know, the teachers from South Africa are being recruited from companies overseas, schools overseas, colleges overseas, and from South Africa, because of COVID, they are doing the online lecturing. That's a reality. Okay. But what's the downside of it? The downside of it is now we're going to be competing with people from throughout the world. So whereas previously in KZN, if you were looking for work, you would normally compete with people in KZN, or if people from out of KZN wanted to come to Durban or KZN, or even Gauteng or Cape Town for that matter. Today the situation is people from throughout the country are competing. Now there's a friend of mine in India, and he was looking for someone in the IT field, a graphic designer. So he went on to a website, it's called Fiverr. Fiverr is a website that is run by an Israeli startup. So anyone who's a freelancer, they could advertise on Fiverr, they will get work, and they will be graded out of 5. So that is why it's called Fiverr. So this friend of mine, Samir, he was looking for a graphic designer. He went on to Fiverr, and he was able to find the most suitable person. And this person had over 100 or 150, 5 out of 5. And what he noticed, the majority of the people who had given him 5 out of 5 were people from European countries and also from India. So he contacted the person, he engaged his services, and that person delivered excellent results for him. But the surprising part was this person who he had engaged was from Pakistan. So the reality is, from his bedroom in Pakistan, he was servicing clients throughout the world. Here, Samir from India went to Fiverr in Israel, engaged someone who had 5 out of 5 by European customers, and all the time he was based in Pakistan. So this is the reality, friends. So this is what internet, etc. is going to do. While it will create opportunities for us, now we have to compete with the best throughout the world. What we'll do in a moment, we will take 5 minutes or maybe a 7 minutes break. So let's just conclude what we're discussing here, and then we'll take a short break. So this is what is required, friends. What we are doing, we need to prepare the child for the path that lies ahead, and not the path for the child. And unfortunately, that is what we have been doing in South Africa for many, many years. Whether it be at school, whether it's at university, the standards at universities have been dropping consistently over the years. I was lecturing at university, so I should know. And this is, unfortunately, this is the reality. We are now, if the standards that, like these exams that I just told you about, if those standards are high, we want to drop the standards instead of raising our standards, our teaching standard, as well as the standard of our learners. So what is required, friends? How are we going to overcome this huge challenge that we have? So that's going to take us to our next topic, and that is ultra learning or self-learning. So let's take a 7 minutes break now. The time is 2 minutes to 10, and if we could return at 10:05, please. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. Let's move on to the second part of our presentation. And we painted a picture of the challenges, but there is a way out. And what that way out is what we're going to be discussing now. So this is ultra learning or self-learning. Now there is a big gap between what learners are studying and will study and what the market wants. And due to this gap, the majority of people are unemployed. So universities, even schools, are not preparing students sufficiently for university. Universities are not preparing their students sufficiently for the working world. So what the result is a gap between what they are learning and what is required in the working world. And they need to fill this gap. Now, how do you fill the gap is what we're going to be discussing. If you close that gap, you are immediately employable. So this is what ultra learning is, and that is what you have to do. You have to solve the problem. The problem is this gap. Now let me play some interesting videos to you, and this will give you an idea of how people through ultra learning came out tops in their field. So there's a person called Brett Rutter. He took part in a very complex TV quiz. It's called Jeopardy in the United States. It's been running for many, many years. And what did Brett Rutter do? How did he prepare? So he prepared over a period of 2 to 3 years. He looked at all the different types of questions that were being asked in the competition. He looked at the width of the question, the different fields that people were being questioned on. He looked at the depth of the question. And then he also noticed that because it was family viewing, the organizers did not have very, very detailed questions on the topics. So with that in mind, he then prepared over a period of 2 years. And you can see what happened in his final session.
This is a tough one, but it's worth $1 million. Secretaries of State is the category. Here is the clue, ladies and gentlemen. Serving 160 years apart, these two Secretaries of State are the only ones who never married. 30 seconds. Good luck. Roger, as you indicated during the commercial break, there was no pressure on you. You know where you're going to finish. You had $2,000. Let's see if you added to it or you lost some of it. Who are Rice and Buchanan? Great game, guys. You are correct. Condoleezza Rice and President Buchanan. And you will add 2,000, and that bumps you up to 4,000. It takes us to Brad Rutter. What was his response? Buchanan and Rice. He is correct. What was his wager? Nothing. So he picks up 11,800 today. Yesterday he had 10,000. That puts him in the lead with 21,800. Ken Jennings, it's up to you now. We need a correct response for $1 million. And we don't have it, and it doesn't matter because you can't acquire enough money. You're going to lose 13,001. Brad Rutter, congratulations. You're the $1 million winner again. Again. What's still the biggest money winner on Jeopardy?
Are you kidding?
You got it. And Roger and Ken, fantastic final. Thank you so much. Back to our regular shows on Monday. Thank you for being with us. So long, everybody. This is a tough one, but it's worth $1 million.
Okay, so that's one. And then who wants to be a billionaire? We all have experiences. We've seen this at some time or the other. And we know how this particular competition works. People are normally given a lifeline, or in fact, 3 lifelines. So if you know the answer, you can ask members of the audience. You are given 2 lifelines to ask them. And if you want to ask someone else, maybe out of the theater, then you can ask the 3rd person. So here we have this person. He was asked the last question. And again, he did self-learning. He did ultra-learning. He did his research over the years. And it was very, very interesting when he used his lifeline. And his lifeline, he called his father. And it's quite amusing why he called his father. So let's just share it with you.
This is taxman John Carpenter looking terribly pleased with himself.
Which of these U.S. presidents appeared on the television series Laugh-In? Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford.
I'd like to call my parents right now.
Sure.
Use my lifeline, call my parents.
What are their names?
My father. I'll talk to my father. Hi, Dad.
Hi.
I don't really need your help, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to win the $1 million. Because the U.S. president appeared on Laugh-In as Richard Nixon. That's my final answer.
Well, my gosh. What can I say except, Debbie, you're going to Paris, and this is the final answer heard all around the world. He's won $1 million.
This is taxman John.
Okay, so that is what ultra learning is. But just to give you some examples what the learners have been doing. So even kids who might be the same age as the learners in your class. Here's an example, 11-year-old Hyderabad student teaching engineering to college students. Can you imagine? He's still probably in middle school. He's only in class 7 there in India. He teaches design, drafting, engineering to university students. He is Mohammed Hassan Ali, and he's got 37 college students, engineering students that he is teaching. And where did he learn this? He learned it from the internet. So there's so much of information out there. There's no excuse today for filling this gap. So this is what ultra learning is, and that is what you have to do, both us as educators as well as our learners. You have to solve the problem. And here's another fantastic example. Here's this girl, Malvika Joshi. She's 17 years old. And when she applied to IIT, this is one of the top engineering colleges in India, she was turned down. And the reason why she was refused entrance was because she did not have, as they call it, class 10 and class 12 certificate. So she did not have our equivalent of a metric. So IIT, they've got strict criteria. However, she was accepted at MIT, and MIT is the most prestigious institute of technology in the world. And how did she get it? Because she was able, from her own self-learning, she got the position, or she was admitted to Bachelor of Science degree, and it was through being a 3-time medal winner at International Olympiad of Informatics, commonly known as Programming Olympiad. An interesting story about her: she was going to school, she was doing reasonably well in school. Her father was an engineer and her mother was also a professional. And her mother decided that, I don't want my daughter to be sad all the time. I want her to be happy when she's studying. And what I noticed from my daughter is she doesn't have this pleasant, cheerful disposition when she is studying. So the mother then decided to remove her daughter from school, and they call it unschooled. So she did homeschooling. The mother then dedicated her time teaching the daughter, and then she noticed that the daughter had an affinity to programming, and that is where she concentrated in addition to other subjects. And she then took part in Olympiads, international Olympiads, and she got 3 medals. And with those medals, as part of her CV, she then applied to MIT, and she was chosen. Again, here's an idea of what learners can do in order to bridge the gap between what they're learning at school and what they are, what the real world will require for them. And here, what college requirements can also require, but they don't have it when they leave school. So, is university qualification necessary? Because you notice in this case of Malvika Joshi, she didn't really require university qualification. And not all our learners are cut out for university qualification. So instead of pushing them, even those parents who are watching, instead of pushing your parents in the direction of getting a qualification, maybe to fulfill the vision or things that we couldn't fulfill during our lifetime, sometimes we push them into something where they don't really have an affinity towards. So it is not necessary to have a university qualification to get a top job. And this is proof of it. Many companies are asking for creativity. There are 15 companies that no longer require 4-year university degrees. And these are some of the top companies. Apple and Google are amongst them. Who wouldn't want to work for them? And they are taking on people without university degrees. But why are they taking them on? Because they got something extra to offer. So even we who might be in the teaching profession and we don't have the necessary qualifications, however, if we are able to do self-learning, if we are able to fill the gap of what is required in the educational field of the 21st century, then definitely there's no reason for us to move up the ranks. Then, those people who stop learning when they leave school, do not have the ability to teach themselves, are definitely going to suffer. There's no excuse today at all. There's so many free online courses that we can register for. If the educators and students want to transition from one career to another, so even you, if you want to transition, maybe you had enough of education, maybe you came from another field, maybe you were in psychology or some other field, and then you did teaching for whatever reason, and now you want to go back to psychology or you want to transition to a totally different field. Nothing prevents you from doing that, provided you do extra learning or to have an advantage in a highly competitive world. Then you must have the capacity, the capability to teach yourself. And that is not difficult at all. In fact, when I did the search, I found that 14% of Google employees have not been to college. Can you imagine? Google, who doesn't want to work for Google? So why are they taking on people? Why is Elon Musk saying, I don't even need university graduates? Because these people they're taking on are in the top 10 or 15% in their particular industry. So this is what we need to aim for. This is what we need to tell our learners as well, our children who are in school or university. Try and be in the top 10 or 15% of your industry, and you'll never be unemployed. Fill the gap between where you are and what you need to do to get a job, and you'll never be unemployed. This is the message we should be passing on all the time. And as I said, there's no excuse for increasing our knowledge. There's so many online courses. These are just some of the free online sites. And learning must always be done in connection with context. Very, very important. Unfortunately, that is not being done. So what do I mean by this? Learn in the context in which you will use it. Why do many graduates fail on the first day on the job? Because they have theoretical knowledge. And the company is asking for problem solving, whilst the graduates have got just theoretical knowledge, what they by-hearted from the textbooks. For example, if you want admission in architecture, then the first thing you need to do is visualize the buildings of the future. For mechanical engineering, the students must visualize the cars of tomorrow. And then you must cross-check what I am learning in connection with the buildings of cars of the future. Is this learning taking me in that direction? Is it taking me in that direction? So here's something, here's a photograph. These are buildings of the future. So we must visualize what are the buildings of the future. So if these are the buildings of the future, however, when I'm coming out of university, this is not what I am being prepared for. So again, there's a gap between what I am learning and what I am required to do when I go into the working world. Similarly, cars of the future. If these are the cars of the future, as a mechanical engineer, I must ask myself, is this what I am learning? Is there a gap between what I am learning and what is required of me? And if there is that gap, then I need to fill the gap. Now here's Apple's car of the future, Apple's car of 2022. So let me share this video with you.
The Apple car is finally here. Well, almost. It is rumored that it will be released in 2022. The Apple car is a secret project that is officially called Project Titan. Apple has already spent $3 billion in development for the electric vehicle. The car will be fully autonomous and controlled using Siri voice commands. For example, the user will be able to adjust the speed of the car or park the car by commanding Siri. It will also be equipped with Apple's monocell battery that will allow for wireless supercharging and high-speed wired charging. The rumored base price for this futuristic vehicle is only $75,000. Tesla is currently the leader of the electric vehicle industry. But the question is, will Apple put Tesla out of business? The Apple car is...
So friends, this is what is required. So what we need to do is paste these images, tell our students, paste these images in a conspicuous place. When they return from college, they must ask themselves, was my learning applicable to this particular design? Can I design like this? Is my learning matching? Can I assist someone to design like this? Can I calculate the value of the material? And if I can, I'm definitely not going to be unemployed. If the answer is yes, you are immediately employable. If you fill this gap, your job will never be taken over by machines or AI. So here's another example. Accommodation built from scratch. So tell our students, if we are lecturing at university, we should tell our students what type of accommodation is being required. There's so much of scrap material everywhere. Can we utilize the scrap material to provide accommodation? And these are things that are being used. You could find us overseas. So the photograph on the left-hand side on the top, that is a pod. That is the type of accommodation people are providing in their backyard when they don't have enough accommodation in the house. The child is growing up, accommodation is too small, so they may build a one-roomer outside for him. Material is made from waste, natural, nature-friendly offices. So if you're a civil engineer, if you're a metallurgical engineer, can you find material like this? This is what ultra learning is all about. What about the hospitality industry and entrepreneurs? So you look at any industry, there's something that one can do through ultra learning. So for instance, for short stay hotel accommodation, what can you provide where there is quick check-in and low cost? Can you look into the future and think of something beyond the textbook? So this is what you'll find in Japan. These are what is called cubicle hotels. So what they do, if there's a building they take over, it is unoccupied, maybe it's 6 stories high, and they will accommodate maybe 1,000 people there. It's just the crib, the one that you see on the right-hand side, the picture. It's like that, sufficiently comfortable for the person to just sleep there, quick check-in, very, very reasonable. And besides that, most of the other facilities are all used by people on that floor. So one floor will be females, one floor for males, and there'll be communal usage. But the cribs themselves are very, very comfortable. In fact, some of the cribs have TV, they have aircon, they have foldable furniture, etc. So this is the way the world is moving. So even people in the hospitality industry, if people want to open up their own businesses, I always say, there's so much of opportunity in South Africa. If there's anyone who is unemployed, he or she must ask himself, why am I unemployed? If thousands of people can come into South Africa, from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and so forth, they come to South Africa, they can make a living for themselves, they buy houses, sometimes more than one house. You see them driving around in cars. They are sending millions of rand overseas or to their home countries every month. It means that South Africa, I always tell my students, South Africa is still a country of milk and honey, but they don't believe it. But if you look around us, the spaza shops, they're owned by who? If you look in downtown Durban, Johannesburg, Cape Town, who's owning most of the shops? All foreigners. Why owning it? And they're doing very, very well. So there are so many opportunities, even in South Africa. I always say 3 things are required if one wants to become a success at anything. And I think this is something that we need to share with our learners. The first thing is that we need to have a plan. We need to know what direction we want to take. Where do I want to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years' time? And in addition, I need to write it down. If you don't write it down, there's 90% possibility that it's not going to happen. So firstly, I must know what my objective is, write it down. The second thing, I need to have the right attitude, the to-do attitude. If I've got those 2 things, and the main third ingredient is to roll up my sleeve and get down to the hard work. If we do this, there's no reason why anyone should be unemployed in South Africa. And also there's no reason why we cannot be successful in what we're doing. And quite often I give my students the examples. There's one black gentleman from Limpopo. He was living there in the township. He did not have any work, but he noticed that in his area, there was a shortage of deodorants and soaps and such like. There was no one supplying it in that area, and the shops were far away. So he then did some purchasing. He purchased, and he was reselling to these houses. He went door to door, and he started selling. And after a period of time, then the business started improving. And then he said, okay, can't I do something more? Why don't I manufacture my own deodorants and soaps and so forth? So he looked at the ingredients. He saw what the ingredients were. He went to the manufacturers and he asked them to supply him in bulk. Then he mixed the ingredients, trial and error, and then he came up with his own products. Then he continued going door to door. And that became such a huge success that then he branded his goods. He branded it, very, very nicely packaged it. And then the video that I showed the students shows that now he is in one of the chain stores. I think either Checkers or Pick and Pay. He's standing there proudly with a merchandising manager with his goods. And he's going to a school, and he's telling the school kids how well he's doing. And it shows there that his turnover that year, a few years ago, was 12 million rand. So where he started off, unemployed, he saw a gap in his area, in his community. He did the three things. He had an objective, he had the right attitude, he rolled up his sleeves, he got down to the hard work, and he made a success for him. There's hundreds of such examples, and this is what I think we need to be doing in school. This is what we need to be encouraging our learners. Everyone, as I said, is not an A student. Everyone might not become a graduate. However, even if we have those students, we still need to give them these wonderful advices. And because we've been at school so long, we've been through the mill, we know the challenges, and these are practical advices that we should be giving. So let me show you this video now on the Capsule Hotel in Japan. So this is what we need. We need entrepreneurs. Try and inculcate an attitude in our children, in our students, that they need to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Whichever profession they go into, whether they want to become a doctor, lawyer, accountant, plumber, whatever they want to do, after learning the ropes, after doing their internship, what they need to do is open up their own business. If they're a doctor, open up a few practices. If you're an optometrist, have a few practices. Same for lawyers. So most of the profession, try and become an employer and not an employee. And this is what South Africa needs. With all the unemployment, this is what we really need. So let's see if there's entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, show them videos like this, and this will open up their minds.
Sweet dreams, Mr. Dallas.
Okay, so I'm sure you enjoyed that. Now, what about the trades? What about carpenters? What about plumbers? What about electricians? Is there some scope for them to do ultra learning? Yes, there is. Now, what is the biggest problem that people have today with urbanization? The biggest problem that people have today with urbanization is the lack of space. So, carpenters who are crying that we don't have work, if they come up with solving that problem, they'll never be unemployed. And in fact, they'll be headhunted. They'll be headhunted if they produce things like this. So if they come up with foldable furniture, for example.
This is a box. This is Mindaugas, who put his dream into that box. This is Mindaugas' dream, a perfect chair, made from 60 loose elements that you can put together any way you want.
We were showing it not as a simple chair, but as a unique piece of furniture with endless possibilities.
Splinty comes with a manual of 25 detailed instructions showing that you can build any chair. A chaise-longue, an armchair, or, well, even your sports equipment. One thing, endless possibilities.
Okay, you got a sense of that. So this is what really we should be training our learners. Creativity, thinking out of the box. Now, who is this man? Have you ever seen this person before? I'll let you think about it for a few seconds. Who is this man? Okay, many of you might not know. His name is Mike Lazaridis. He's the son of a Greek immigrant. Parents went to Canada when he was quite young. And in the early 2000s, he was regarded as a genius. From a very young age, he was attracted to electronic gadgets and engineering. By the age of 4, he was building his own record player out of Lego blocks and rubber bands. In grade 6, he befriended 2 boys. They built radios and rockets in their basement, and they electronically detonated iodine bombs made from chemicals. In high school, together with a friend, he was the winner of a science fair for a solar-powered water heater that could track the sun. Can you imagine? In his spare time, he developed a buzzer for school quiz competitions, and the buzzer was so successful that many schools purchased the buzzer from him for their quiz competitions, and the profits from the buzzer covered his first year's university tuition fees. And surprising, a month before he would have graduated with an electronical engineering degree, he decided to drop out of college. He joined General Motors on a contract of 600,000 rand per annum. He was so he had such a research mindset that he could not wait to get into the thick of things in developing things. So his company, RIM, Research in Motion, even won an Academy Award for inventing a digital barcode reader for film editing. And the invention meant that for inventing a digital barcode reader for film editing. And the invention meant that work that used to take film editors 2 days now required only 20 minutes. So you can see what an enterprising person he was, what a creative genius he was. With his research mindset and scientist-like thinking, he did something that shocked the world and for which all of us are eternally indebted to Mike Lazaridis. What is it? Every one of us has got it in front of us today, or an equivalent of it. He was the founder of BlackBerry. So in early 2000s, when BlackBerry hit the market, and it was such a phenomenal success. When BlackBerry came out, it was the fastest growing company on the planet. Secondly, his fans were Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, and his greatest fan was Barack Obama. In the summer of 2009, BlackBerry had gained 51% of the entire US market and 27% of the entire world market. He was at the top of his career, and he was in his mid-30s or so at that time. Then what happened? Within 5 years, by 2014, BlackBerry's market share had plummeted to less than 1% and slowly disappeared completely. What happened? What caused this? And if I have to ask you what caused it, all of you will have the correct answer. So what was it? It was the fact that he failed to adapt, and that is what caused him to fall to the earth. His engineers were telling him, why don't we introduce this thing? Why don't we introduce this thing? Why don't we have end-to-end encryption? He refused. Why don't we have the whole operating system put into a cell phone? He said, no, no, no. That's not necessary. All your engineers must worry about is sending emails. So he was not prepared to grow further. And as a result, we know what happened to BlackBerry. Geniuses know that. So they keep rethinking and refining the process. And here are some examples of 50 companies whose market share was in excess of 50% and are all gone now. Some of them are very, very familiar. So we got the likes of Motorola, Polaroid, Xerox machines, Yahoo, Atari, those games that we used to play when we were young. Nokia tried to make a comeback now. So these companies were in the top of their industries. And because they failed to adapt, mental elasticity wasn't there, a growth mindset wasn't there, they collapsed. Creativity is a forever skill. If you or your students have creativity, the world will want you. That's a fact. Challenge the status and move the human race forward. Every one of us, whether we are parents, whether we are educators, or even we are students, we need to challenge the status quo, or else we'll end up like Nokia and BlackBerry. Geniuses do not only study, but they think also over their syllabus. So this is a recommendation I have to all the educators. At the end of each lesson, set aside some time, whether it is 5 minutes, 10 minutes after the lesson, for the students to think about what they've just studied. Continuous thinking brings about creativity. There's very little creativity that's being done in classes, unfortunately, and even at universities. Very little creativity, therefore the students are not being prepared for what awaits them in the working world. Simple example, if you were to tell the learner, the bridge has collapsed. So as far as the student's mind is concerned, that's the end of the story. Bridge has collapsed. But if we were to tell the learner, now how are we going to get across the river to the other side? And that opens up his or her mind. Now they're thinking about alternatives. They're coming up with something creative. So this is what we need to do. If we are teaching them any lesson, pause for a while at the end of the lesson, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, discuss it. Also, what we need to see is what we are learning today, how could it be used somewhere else? Cross-pollination. This is what the world requires today. A very good example, there was a person, an engineer, and when he used to go for it was an electrical engineer, so when he used to go to these big towers, etc., for repairing them, and when he used to come back from those towers, sometimes he has to walk through bushes, and then he noticed that he used to have all those very, very nasty, troubling, some sort of weeds, and they used to cling to his pants and his socks. And then what we normally do when we find that when we come from the veld, then we pull it out. Don't we do that? Right, so then he used to do that for a number of years. Then he started thinking about it. And he started thinking, now what is causing these weeds now to stick to my pants? And when he had a look at it under the microscope, he noticed that there were hooks. So he put on his creativity hat. What can I use these hooks for? What problems can they solve? So one of the problems that he came up with that could be solved, and it's something that all of us use today, and we'll be eternally grateful to him. So what was the problem that he solved? He came up with Velcro. He came up with Velcro. So what Velcro does? So many different things Velcro does. So this has become a $1 billion industry today. So what he did, there was something, he applied his mind, where can this be used? Where else can this be used? And then he came up with a creation, and it's $1 billion industry. So this is what we need to do. We need to get our kids to start thinking, and we can start off from the first lesson that we have when they come back on Monday or whenever we have after the exams. Sit back, discuss it. Where can this information be used? Which other context? So if you're teaching biology, where can this be used in chemistry and so forth? First career advice that you should give your students and also to you. Do not do over specialization, because the world in which we have entered post-pandemic requires people with cross-disciplinary sciences. The world is searching for those geniuses who know many sciences. That is interdisciplinary cross-fertilization of sciences, similar to the example I just gave you now. We have to stand at the pinnacle of many disciplines. But you might think that over the years, we were taught that we need to specialize in a field. However, the world is moving in the opposite direction now, friends. Take, for example, the great scholars of the past. They were multidimensional, even Rushd. These were some of the fields in which he wrote: philosophy, theology, medicine, astrology, physics, psychology, medicine, mathematics, and the list goes on. Leonardo da Vinci, he was a painter, he was a draftsman, engineer, scientist, sculptor. If you look at his manuals, his journals, what beautiful drawings he had there before he converted them into paintings. Or for that matter, Rabindranath Tagore. He was a poet, writer, playwright, composer, philosopher, social reformer, and a painter. So you'll notice from this that the geniuses of the past, they were not one-dimensional, they were multi-dimensional, and this is what the world requires today. If we want to beat AI, and if we want to beat robots, then this is how we have to go. So, and here's something very, very interesting I came across recently. This is Rabindranath Tagore. He passed away on the 7th of August, 1941. And as I mentioned, he was accomplished in many fields. He even received a Nobel Prize for Literature. And this is what he said, something very, very pertinent. Don't limit a child to your own learning, for she was born in another time. I'm repeating, don't limit a child to your learning, for she was born in another time. And how true this is. Teach a child according to the era that she is going to live in. If you compare when we were growing up with the kids of today, there is a huge difference. So if we are still teaching them the way we were taught, it's not going to work out. The world is moving too fast for that. And in fact, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu also stated something similar. He stated that when you have a child, never teach him or her in accordance with your times. Can you imagine? This was 1400 years ago, the statement was made. Why? Because the time that they are going to face is going to be another time. Your time is different, and their time is different. Prepare them for the coming time that they are going to encounter. So there's lots of work that we have to do. We have to now move out from the comfort zone that we might have been. I'm not saying everyone. If we've been in a comfort zone, we need to come out of the comfort zone if we want to take our learners forward, if we want to take ourselves forward. So there is a huge need for change. There needs to be a mental shift. Every 6 months, technology will change, and you will be given little time to adapt. Before you have time to come out of your comfort zone, again, you'll have to learn something. So constant learning. This is where self-learning comes in. There's a wonderful quote I came across. Alvin Toffler, this is what he stated. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. I'll repeat that because of its importance. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Let's look at our lives. Is there learning that I still have to do? Is there learning that I have to unlearn because of the new times? And do I have to relearn? And if it applies to me, and I know it applies to all of us, then this is what we need to do. And to conclude, what we need to have is lifelong learning. The future is not for humans, but it is for AI and for sophisticated algorithms. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're now moving from AI to a super I, right? Artificial super intelligence. We're moving from 3D printers, we're moving to 4D printers. We're moving from the 4th industrial revolution. Some people say that we're already beginning to be in the 5th industrial revolution. So this is their time. Robots that are being constantly upgraded, like how our mobiles are being constantly upgraded. It only means that if you and I want to qualify in such a competition, we have to be upgrading all the time. We have to be upgrading all the time. We cannot have a fixed mindset. We have to have a growth mindset, a huge difference. Either we have a fixed mindset or we have a growth mindset. And this is the mindset that we have to embrace. The future will be bleak for those who give up learning and hopeful for those who are constantly upgrading. It depends on your response. For you to have positive response, you will have to do ultra learning. And this is something that we have been taught from a young age. In fact, haven't we been taught when we grow up, acquire knowledge from the cradle to the grave? So there it's in the Sharia. This is what we are supposed to do. And we need to be our own competitors. So what should we do? This is what Apple does. Apple becomes its own competitor. It tells its staff to write down what can our competitor do. Apple tells its staff to write down anything that its competitor can do before they actually do it. They kill the competition themselves by thinking like the competition. By doing this, they stay ahead of the competition all the time. So this is something that I will log off with to all the educators. Ask yourself what our competitor educators can do. By using technology, which areas in our country or globally can we penetrate? Let's be our own competitors. Let us do it before them, or else we will get closed down like Nokia or BlackBerry. After 9/11, the US Army brought in Hollywood screen and story writers to imagine what else the terrorists can think of doing. So this is the mindset we should have. Homeland Security got them to imagine what could happen, imagine what impact it could create. And these are the things we should be doing among the educators and with the learners. This is the need of the hour. So what should we be doing? What should we be teaching the learners? We've got just 10 subjects. They are in their place. However, if we want to prepare our learners sufficiently for the real world, and we have to be brutally honest with ourselves and brutally honest with the learners as well. Brutally honest with ourselves, are we preparing them sufficiently? And secondly, we should be brutally honest with them and tell them what reality they're going to be facing. We do a lot of work at Young Leaders Academy, a lot of work with university students, and we teach them workplace readiness. And they are dumbfounded at what is required for them in the working world. And then they say, we are definitely not ready. Will we cope? So these are some of the skills now we should be teaching our learners. I know we don't have time, but these are things to think about. The importance of volunteering, how important volunteering is, problem solving, critical thinking, having an entrepreneurship mindset, creativity, taking two things, putting them together and coming up with something totally new. Communication and persuasion. I know some schools have got extracurricular activities, Toastmasters, etc., but not all the schools, and it's not open to all the students. Teach them that mistakes are our best friends. Mistake is not a swear word. We all learn from mistakes. The great thinkers, the millionaires of the world today were all made mistakes when they started off. And the importance of asking the right questions. Unfortunately, in lots of schools I've come across, some of the schools, we ask the learners, why don't you ask questions? Not necessarily will apply to you, but this is our experience. We ask the learners, why don't you ask questions? And we got a whole topic on the importance of asking the right questions. And sometimes they tell us, the teachers just tell us, keep quiet, don't ask questions. So are we creating the right environment for all this? Are we preparing the students sufficiently? I know these are soft skills. We don't have time for it. We need to tick the box because we've got strict deadlines and there's so much to do. And now with COVID, we have to double up the time that we spend. But really, friends, this is what is required if we want to go forward ourselves or if we want to take our students forward. Fortunately, AMS have stated that if you educators want to learn about these things, then we can have ongoing training like the one that we are providing now. So there is that opportunity still open to you. Kindly, we've come to an end of our presentation. Kindly complete the evaluation form by taking the picture of this QR code, and then that will take you directly onto the evaluation form, or you could use that link. And AMS really want the evaluation from you to see whether this was something that was useful to you, whether you benefited from it. And if you have, and if you want to have further training like this, then say so in your evaluation form. So unfortunately, because we're online, I don't have the opportunity to take questioning or even get interaction with you on the chat, etc. But inshallah, in future, we'll try and do that. So thank you very much from my side. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And if there's anything that you need, any assistance, any queries you have, anything you don't understand, Mr. Zafar Ahmed has got my contact details. Mr. Ibrahim Mansour has got my contact details, and they will pass it on to you. Jazakallah. Subhanallah bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much, Advocate Vahed, for that very thought-provoking presentation. We thank you for your time. Delegates that are on the chat, if you have a good smartphone, perhaps this QR code will take you directly to the online Google form for evaluation, which shouldn't take you more than 2 minutes to complete. Or if you wish to, you can type in that into your Google search and you can fill in that. We've also asked your principals to share the link with you by email. Please, if you could fill that in, we'll really appreciate it. It just allows us for future planning. Advocate Vahed, thank you very much for that presentation and the manner in which you presented it. I'd like to call on Brother Abdullah Suji to just sort of pass a formal vote of thanks. And when he's done, inshallah, we'll hand the mic over to Kari to conclude with the dua, inshallah. Abdullah Suji, come on, sir.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It has been an excellent program, and Professor has outdone himself and exceeded all expectations. I want to thank you because you have touched on important aspects related to the fourth industrial revolution. I must mention, though, your ending was very pertinent. I'm busy with an article on my website called, Afghanistan is America's new Vietnam. And I came across an article where the Americans have written a document years back talking about rebuilding America's defense strategy, forces and resources for a new century. They're thinking ahead as to how to overcome and how to become the dominant force using information technology, artificial intelligence, augmented reality. And from that point, I was drawn to think, how will they teach the children? How will they teach the next generation of Afghanistanis who are coming to America as we speak? That is why I'm so grateful for what Professor has done this morning. He has highlighted the need to be thoughtful in how we approach every lesson. And I like the point I made here, which Professor touched on. I think it's an important point, and that is ultra learning, and we should embrace it. I am thankful that we have had this program, and Professor, from my side and on behalf of the Association of Muslim Schools, I want to thank you immensely, and most definitely we will engage you, because what you're saying is relevant, relative, and if we do not teach children the way they learn, then they're not going to learn in the way that we teach. Finally, to the organizers who have put this together, in the Association of Muslim Schools Executive, National Executive, thank you very much. We've done a sterling job. Therefore, I would like one and all to take this learning material that you've absorbed, pass it on to the teachers who have been absent from this, and to your principals, so that we can embrace the new challenges facing the Ummah, facing the world, because we need to become the leaders of tomorrow. Jazakallah khair wa ahsanul jaza.
Jazakallah to our guests. Jazakallah for this wonderful presentation and opening our eyes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and guide us to what is best for us as teachers and also for our children, that we do and guide them so they take their rightful place in the Ummah, inshallah. And I'll conclude with the dua, inshallah.
Karisa, before you start with the dua, if I could just add to the thanks, I'd like to thank the Orient Islamic School Board for availing their facilities to organize this particular webinar, and Brother Yusuf Ibrahim from Orient in particular, who sort of provided all the technical support to make sure we had the successful engagement online, creating the posters, the links, sharing it, coordinating it. So thank you very much, Brother Yusuf and the team at Orient. Babu, if you could convey our thanks to the Orient Board as well for affording us and allowing us to use the facilities at Orient Islamic School. Jazakallah. Karishab, go ahead.
Jazakallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا ونبينا مولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم يا رب العالمين لك الحمد والشكر على كرمك وفضلك ونعمك علينا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل عاقب أمورنا بالخير بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم رب يسر ولا تؤسر وتمم بالخير يا فتاح. Oh Allah, we thank you for all your blessings and bounties upon us. Oh Allah, guide us so that we can fulfill the amana that you have put in our hands, that we develop the future ummah in a manner that pleases you, Ya Allah. اللهم اجعلنا من الفائزين في الدين والدنيا والآخرة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم وفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد. بفضل سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam. Jazakallah, Karisa. Jazakallah to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.